On this week's episode, credentialed journalists Rod Palmer and Richard Greaser discuss the new Michael Saylor movie, David Bailey's Birthday, BlackRock commercial actors being the biggest threats to our democracy, and much more. Buckle up, because you are about to experience the hardest-hitting news show in the world. This is Kaylee Welch, and you are listening to the Bugle Weekly, the most thermodynamically sound podcast in the world. But before we start, I'm going to play the trailer to Michael Saylor's new groundbreaking movie, National Treasure 3: Genesis Code.
The most spectacular treasure in history. Developed over decades by cypherpunks across different continents. It was finally completed by a mysterious cypherpunk named Satoshi, whose keys were hidden somewhere in the digital realm. But he left clues for us hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to find them before the CIA discovered the treasure and its potential.
Keeping this treasure out of the hands of the spooks, Michael, is your destiny.
You're Bitcoin investors, aren't you?
We're more like Bitcoin savers, actually.
All his life, Michael Saylor searched for a thermodynamically sound asset no one believed existed.
Don't you get it, Michael? The asset is a myth.
I refuse to believe that.
But what he thought was the final clue was only the beginning.
It's hidden in plain sight. It's in Satoshi's white paper.
You think Satoshi's keys are encoded in the white paper?
It's a cipher.
And how do you know that, exactly?
We don't...
Is the cipher in the room with us, right now?
But Michael Saylor isn't the only one who discovered the hidden treasure.
The CIA is working around the clock to crack the code. Hell, they might have already cracked it.
Now, he's in a race against time and against spooks to recover Satoshi's wallet before it's too late.
We have to get our hands on those keys and distribute Satoshi's coins to podcasters through fountain boosts before the CIA gets them.
The CIA gets them, and then what?
Everything Whitney Webb warned us about comes true.
Michael Saylor must unlock the secrets of game theory using first principles thinking and tap the Cyber Hornet brain trust of Bitcoin Twitter, group chats, and Bitcoin podcasts to save the world from being taken over by feds.
Try brute force.
Tether is working with Langley. We might be too late.
Michael Saylor. National Treasure 3. Genesis Code.
Well, we're recording.
How's it going, everybody? Man, what an exciting movie. The National Treasure 3 Genesis Code. It sounds like it's going to be. I am a huge fan of all the National Treasure movies, and this is the third installment. And in this time, Bitcoin is front and center, starring Michael Saylor. It's going to be cool. I guess I heard Anthony Pompliano's is going to be in the movie. So it's really cool, man. I'm excited to see that one.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for it too. I'm kind of hoping that this isn't one of those situations where they make a really good trailer for a movie and then the movie is like pretty subpar. Because I think everybody's experienced that before and is probably going into it cautiously. But we don't really have any, I don't think we have any really good examples of any movies like that are Bitcoin themed that were really popular, really good, or really well produced. So this could be, a pretty big moment for...
Right. The best Bitcoin movie so far, I would say, is Thank God for Bitcoin. But that's like, that's kind of a niche religious Christian movie. This would be our first like Hollywood blockbuster hit that we could really see. So it'll be interesting. I'm worried, Hollywood it's soft right now. I mean, pretty much everything that's being put out in the movie theaters and Netflix, it's all CIA. And it used to be, the CIA made great movies like Top Gun, Independence Day, Armageddon, those were great movies, but that's because the CIA had competition. But then the final nail in the coffin was when the CIA finally put Harvey Weinstein in prison. And Harvey Weinstein was the only other competitor that made good movies to the CIA, not in no competition. So it's like the Democratic Party in California, they don't have to worry about losing elections. So they're terrible. They just keep raising taxes no matter how few people can afford them. And it's the same, like the CIA, Disney, they all just keep making just total, bust movies because they don't really have any inspiration. But yeah, I'm hopeful this one will do good. We're recording a little later. We were not able to record last night. We usually record on Sunday. So we're recording on Monday. It happens to be the man, David Bailey's birthday. So happy birthday, David Bailey. I did not realize that David Bailey just turned 34 years old. David Bailey is practically a Generation Z TikTok Zoomer. He definitely, with that beard, he's gained a little weight recently. He looks a lot older. That's all I'm saying. And but I guess a lot of things make sense considering his age. Did you know David Bailey was that young?
I didn't. I was very shocked. I mean, I think he's got a little bit of like Charles Hoskinson type
right
deal going on here where he presents or looks a lot older than he is, and it might be that he does that intentionally, trying to get people to respect him more.
Right. I mean, I respected him more when I thought he was in his 40s, for sure. But yeah, I mean, that's, what they say. Being in this space in general, it ages you. It's like being a president of the United States. Those guys age quickly. Surprisingly, Donald Trump did not age when he was in office. He looks pretty much the same on day one as he did on January 6th when he was leading the riots on the Capitol. So let's see. I mean, I don't know if he'll age if he wins this one this year, but maybe it'll be the Bitcoin industry. Maybe being a Bitcoiner will finally be what ages him and makes him feel those years. But speaking of Donald Trump, the big news right now is that another CIA asset tried to assassinate Donald Trump yesterday. And if you haven't heard about that, I don't know how you have not heard about that yet, but there was a dude, he was kind of an insane leftist Ukraine poster. He has a lot of Ukraine flags in his posts and his profile. And he was setting up with an AK-47 about 200 or 500 yards from where Donald Trump was golfing. And he claims he was just going to shoot the gun to scare Donald Trump so that Donald Trump missed his drive and was really pissed. But obviously, if you're pointing a AK-47 at the president or, the former president of the United States, the Secret Service has got to react. They shot at him, they missed, and they actually took this guy into custody. They arrested him alive. So this time, when this guy's going to kill himself, or we're going to maybe hopefully figure out what's going on here. But what do you think about this shit?
Well, I think it's kind of interesting that I'm hearing some preliminary reports that he was in a BlackRock commercial. So this would be the second shooter that was featured in a BlackRock commercial.
Correct.
I kind of wonder if this was a stunt by Larry Fink to bring attention to the BlackRock Bitcoin ETFs.
Right. Yeah, they said, they told us at the end of last year, back in December, they said all this money is going to be poured in to advertisement and marketing for the Bitcoin ETFs. And I personally only saw maybe one or two TV commercials of the Bitcoin ETF, other than on Twitter. So I don't know where that money's gone, but I guess maybe we're finding out. They're doing like some real in real life marketing. What way to catch people's attention better than assassinating the first would-be Bitcoin president?
Yeah, I mean, going off the topic of David Bailey, so David Bailey, helped Trump to become the first Bitcoin pleb, former president in history by giving him one of those coins that had a lot of Bitcoin on it, which is really threatening to BlackRock because they're trying to sell these ETF platforms. But if the former president is a pleb that self-custodies,
right,
it's kind of bad for ETF sales.
Oh, wow. So I didn't think about that. So you think there's some logic here that BlackRock wants people to be funneled towards their regulated custodial ETF, and that Donald Trump will inspire plebs to run their own nodes and to buy Bitcoin and store it in cold storage in their hardware wallets.
Yeah, that's kind of my going theory.
Wow. Well, they said and then they fight you. They're not fighting Bitcoin anymore, but they are fighting plebs and that non-compliant ethos of self-custody. So that's interesting. They're actually trying to, well, first of all, I just think that's a foolish strategy from the standpoint that just because they take out Trump doesn't mean plebs are going to stop taking self-custody of their Bitcoin.
No, but it takes a big self-custody influencer off the table. And that's the thing. They want to attack, these types of people as much as possible, and discredit them. And it's a pretty powerful statement, where if somebody sees essentially like another politician, for example, sees like, hey, if you self-custody Bitcoin, we're going to take our army of people that have been featured in our commercials and load them up with AK-47s or AR-15s and go after you. It kind of has a chilling effect. You know what I mean?
Right. So if we look at the pattern of the past few months, we saw a lot of influencers and podcasters that were laid off at Swan. We saw the same thing happen with Bitcoin Magazine. A lot of influencers and journalists and podcasters lost their jobs right after the conference. And now they're trying to take down the granddaddy of them all, influencer. Wow, that would have a huge chilling effect. So to go back to this trend, so we have not had anybody try to assassinate a U.S. president or a candidate for U.S. president in 40 years. And before that, it was, 20 or 30 years before that when they shot JFK and RFK's dad. But now we've had two in, 2 or 3 months. And both of them have been BlackRock influencers. They've been in BlackRock commercials, but neither of them look the part of an influencer. And I read reports that the CIA was hanging out at shopping malls during the weekday when, not basically successful influential people are not at the mall on a Wednesday afternoon. It's kind of like people down on their luck. And the CIA has been, renting out. I think right now they have to vacate for Spirit Halloween stores, but when the Spirit Halloween stores go out in November, the CIA goes back in. And they've been basically telling people, hey, like, we can make you an influencer, somebody who's like got a top Bitcoin podcast, a top TikTok channel. You just have to like work with us and use our program. And they've been training these people to become assassins, but promising them influencer careers and getting them jobs in BlackRock commercials. So now it makes me really suspect of every person in a BlackRock commercial. They may all be sleeper assets waiting to be activated to try to take out self-custody influencers such as the President of the United States.
Yeah, I think we should be trying to essentially track a database, everybody that's been in a BlackRock commercial, and we could probably find out who the next assassin to attempt an assassination.
Have you ever seen a BlackRock commercial other than the ones that get shared when, one of the CIA's assassins, was a part of a news story?
I can't say that I've ever actually seen one before prior to this.
It's interesting because it used to be, and we talked about this already, right? Like the quality of CIA psyops in Hollywood, they're just garbage. I don't think anybody is inspired or becomes patriotic after watching a Hollywood movie put out in the past 3 or 5 years. So now that they're no longer able to do propaganda effectively from Hollywood, they're having to actually go out with these Hollywood actors or these influencers and engage in, violent protest directly. That's a scary development when Hollywood movies no longer work. War in cities.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges that is facing Hollywood right now is, Hollywood's very reliant on Jewish people to make their content for them. And I know, like, the average Jew around the world is pretty upset right now. They're pretty, worn out because they have these, various groups, constantly launching missiles at them. And it makes it very...
They're busy. They're really busy right now. They're dodging missiles from the Houthis. They're dodging memes from right-wing, alt-right accounts. They're dodging memes from, people like the communists to the left of Kamala Harris. They're pretty busy. So they've had to recruit Ukraine supporters, American Ukraine supporters to do the content creation and to do, help create the buzz and the hype around some of their favorite strategies and policies.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how do you outrun a hypersonic missile is one of my questions.
Right. Like, I don't know the speed that a hypersonic missile goes, but I know that the training regimen that Bitcoiners follow, no seed oils, walking, they help in better shape. I don't know that it maybe you need those like special Bitcoin shoes to run that fast.
Yeah, I mean, there was this like whole meme a few years back, talking about how you could outrun bullets if you narrate to Iran. And maybe that's the case. So maybe, people should be watching some more anime to kind of understand the mechanics and in the proper form of how to properly outrun a hypersonic missile.
What is the term for those anime guys that run really fast?
I think you're thinking of Naruto running.
Yeah, right. So during the, I think it was in 2018 or so, the planned assault on Area 51. There was a legion of Naruto runners that were alleged to be like attacking from one of the flanks. So it exists. Those people exist. We need to orange pill Naruto runners.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be very interesting. I mean, this is really good for, practice for just like basic Bitcoin security. Like a lot of people, focus heavily on, things like, how do you secure your Bitcoin with having an offline device? For some reason they call it air gapping, meaning that it's not connected to the internet. But they're not taking in their physical security as well and into consideration, because there's like a different threat vector that is being presented right now, which is these hypersonic missiles, of which, I don't think most people have figured out an adequate response to that, of how do you keep your stack safe, of like, yes, you can have, a steel plate that you stamp your seed phrase in, but you personally, you have to take your personal security into consideration, because like a lot of these individuals out there that know what Bitcoin is, they realize that if they take you out and your Bitcoin is so secure that they can't access it, and you don't have a solid backup plan in place to, give those keys to, one of your loved ones to restore. Essentially, if they take you out, they're making their own Bitcoin more valuable, because the Bitcoin on the market is less.
It's really an underappreciated threat factor there, because people talk about, Peter McDonald made his family, like he wants people to know that his Bitcoin is not at his house, and some people like my keys, like the first 12 words are in one continent, the next 12 words are in another jurisdiction. If you tell me you're not getting my Bitcoin, so that should disincentivize you from showing up to my house to try to steal my Bitcoin or to kill me for my Bitcoin. However, a lot of Bitcoin holders, even if they're married, even if they have families, they're still orange shells. They haven't been able to actually orange pill their wife. They haven't taught their wife how to run a node, how to restore a wallet from a seed phrase backup. So what these pirates, these criminals, what they have to do, and they know this, is if they can kill you with a hypersonic missile or otherwise, they don't need to steal your Bitcoin, because theirs theirs becomes more valuable. They have taken sell pressure off the market, and they counteract some of these suppressors like BlackRock, who are suppressing the Bitcoin price. And maybe that is what they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to kick off the next bull market by removing sell pressure from people who don't have their Bitcoin stored in a way that can be accessed by their families when they pass.
One of the concerning things that I would think about, is kind of deciphering Michael Saylor's, previous statements. So one of the things he suggested in the past was that one of the most selfless things that you could do is to die with your own keys, right?
Right.
And so, I almost wonder if like the unspoken thing that he was saying was, if you go kill Bitcoiners, to make them die with their keys, is that one of the most, selfless things that's going on? And maybe maybe that's the angle with these Trump assassinations. Somebody
exactly. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say, I think people kind of tell that Donald Trump doesn't have a good backup plan for his Bitcoin. His sons are kind of retarded, and they probably can't figure it out, and they probably don't have to. So they know that David Bailey gave Donald Trump one full Bitcoin on stage in front of everybody at the Bitcoin conference. So they know there's only 21 million Bitcoin, and they know that if they shoot Donald Trump and kill him, that's one Bitcoin now, probably off the market forever. Nobody's going to spend that. Donald Trump's probably already lost it himself. He's probably not even in danger, but because he already lost it. But, people don't realize that.
Yeah, this changes the entire economics of assassination markets, which I'd find concerning. And this is why, a lot of people suggest to never tell anybody how much Bitcoin you have. There's two reasons for that. One is, a lot of people out there don't have very much Bitcoin. So you don't want people to see how small your dick is. But, if some people see, like, hear how much you do have and your dick is really big, they're going to want to take you off the market, so to say. And so there's an economic incentive to do that, which, creates a big security risk.
Right. It's almost it's almost like you want whether it's almost like you don't want people to know you have Bitcoin at all. One sat could be generational wealth at some point in the future. So even if you thought you withdrew or sold all your Bitcoin from one of your wallets, if a spiv dusts it with a few sats in order to try to track you or to track your address, that could be putting you in danger. I mean, that could be how the spivs are signaling to their influencers which people to assassinate. They send them the KYC records that they stole, from exchange, and they say, "Listen, we dusted 7 accounts. Use this KYC data to track down the people and the addresses belonging to these 7 accounts, these 7 addresses. Those are your targets for assassination." That's scary.
It is very scary.
But to go back to what you were saying is this learning how to protect yourself. And there's a lot of Bitcoiners who, it's almost like a cognitive dissonance, because a lot of Bitcoiners are really into guns, having ammo, stocking up on guns and ammo, 3D printing guns, learning jujitsu, eating steak so you can become strong, so you can fight and so you can battle. But also at the same time, the best strategy when you're encountering any conflict is really to turn around and run. You're there, and even if you know jujitsu, if the person pulls out a gun, they shoot you and you die. Or if you know jujitsu and the person doesn't immediately lay down on the ground and engage you, they'll take, what do you do? Like, you can't do jujitsu standing up. Maybe they have a better gun than you, maybe they have better aim, maybe they have a hypersonic missile. But a lot of Bitcoiners seem to realize, like, when the government is coming after you, that's when you retreat and run. And they, instead of trying to fight the government and trying to counteract them, they just retreat. They say, "Hey, we're not gonna have our wallet available in Germany anymore, or in the United States anymore, or we're just gonna retreat." So it's trying to realize that these in real life, it's much less likely, I guess what I'm saying, is that a government agency is going to try to take down the Bitcoin protocol, because it's a very, very hard thing to destroy. But they can much, much, much more easily hit your house with a hypersonic missile and make their Bitcoin more valuable and make yours, you're dead. You don't get to spend it anymore. You hodled for years. You never got to enjoy it. And they just make their Bitcoin more valuable by hitting you with a hypersonic missile when you're asleep.
Yeah. Well, I hope the Secret Service is training Donald Trump on how to Naruto run so he can outrun, the next assassin's bullets. I think it was very fortunate this time around that the attempted assassin used an AK-47, because I think, the average listener, is familiar with, the way that firearms work, know that an AK-47 is not a good firearm for long-range, accurate shooting. That's why the CIA loves to give these terrorist groups AKs, so that they know when the U.S. military is going to have to fight them later on, the soldiers going into battle, will have a much lower casualty rate because they won't get hit as much.
Right. They teach them how to hold the rifles incorrectly, and they just kind of they send them music videos from rappers, and they're like, "This is how you hold a gun," which is like sideways, like you're not bracing it against your shoulder. And also, AK-47s have a very distinct echo, or whatever you want to call it. When you shoot the gun, it sounds very distinct if you are trained, and you've been to war. So it's really, they're just kind of like, it's almost like a big red flag. If you see anybody with an AK-47, they're probably a Fed. But these, we talked about this back, I would say, in the beginning of June, on our episode. I think it was June 10th or June 3rd. I can't remember. You can figure it out if you listen. But we talked about assassination markets, and we talked about how there was, I think, nearly 40 assassinations of political candidates in Mexico during their general election earlier this year. And this, with this second attempt on Trump's life, it seems like it's now safe to say that what we warned about back in June, which is that assassination markets on different blockchains like Solana and anywhere where they use meme coins, these assassination markets have exploited our open border and have migrated to blockchains in the United States. Even some compliant blockchains, for example, have potentially been infiltrated by these assassination markets. And so I think, like I said, we've gone 40 years without a presidential assassination attempt, and now we've had 2 in 3 months. I think there's a better chance that we see these accelerate more than kind of die off, especially with the Federal Reserve expected to cut interest rates later this week. You can expect to see this cause a boom in meme tokens and assassination tokens because those really, really thrive in low interest rate environments.
Well, a lot of people have been wondering why Donald Trump, is so against open borders. And this is one of the primary reasons why he has been, is he's tried to stop this immigration of, these non-compliant markets, which are targeting him specifically. So it's much more than, him believing that there's societal problems going on. There's personal self-interest going on here.
Oh, right. I mean, if you think about it from just a very a first principles, common sense approach, Donald Trump is the most memeable, if not the most memeable person in the world. It's arguably him and Elon Musk. So which assassination meme token is going to be the most valuable? Well, the one that represents the most valuable meme. So if you yourself are a really, really popular meme, the assassination token that they mint for your head is going to be the one that attracts the most assassins. It's going to attract the most BlackRock commercial actors.
Yeah, and it makes me think, is BlackRock participating in these types of markets themselves?
They're trying to get a Solana ETF as early as later this year or next year. Why do you think BlackRock, the only company that I'm aware of that has commercials with presidential assassins acting in them, why are they trying to get meme token ETFs passed in the United States? If not to attract and recruit. It's a great recruiting tool to say, if you're actors in our commercials, you will be able to make a lot of money in these assassination token markets once the ETF launches. It's happening. It's like if you go to a startup and you work with the company and they go public, they IPO, you make a lot of money off of that stock, that equity. Well, if you are an actor in BlackRock commercials and you are getting paid in assassination tokens, when that ETF goes public, boom, you retire.
Yeah, I think what's really important for the listener to understand is the world is a lot more non-compliant than they often perceive it to be.
Right. It is the people that you think are the most compliant, it turns out to be they're the ones who are the least compliant. But they're hypocrites. And that's why there's so many angry people in the country right now, is because they spent their whole life studying hard, doing everything right, trying to be compliant. And they realize that compliant guys finish last.
Yeah, it's hard to want to, follow the rules when you see everybody else cheating. And especially the people that are supposedly supposed to enforce the rules and are making up the rules that you are supposed to comply.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we talked about this again a few weeks ago about the compliance cantillionaires. They create the regulations. They create the regulatory clarity. They create the laws that are very expensive for companies to comply with. It costs these companies upwards of millions of dollars per year to be compliant But the people who created these compliance laws, they don't have to make that investment. They are basically, they have the opportunity to position their investments and their companies. This is what Nancy Pelosi does. Nancy Pelosi invests in companies right before a new compliance law comes out. And so all of the companies who are non-compliant with this new law, well, their stock goes down because they have so much more costs to incur. But the companies who are already compliant that she was aware of, now she makes money off of the value rise in those stocks. And this is what all the compliance cantillionaires do. And none of them, I mean, even if you are compliant, they can decide at any point in time if they don't think you're compliant anymore. And so it creates this chaos. If you don't know which decisions to make, which laws to follow, because they might not benefit you to follow them, well, then you're going to have a breakdown in markets, you're going to have a breakdown in compliance, you're going to have a breakdown in law and order. And that is not what you want to see if you're expecting a bull market in Bitcoin. You do not want to see these breakdowns. Like, we need certain stability in markets if we want to see NGU.
100%. Oh, what a world we live in.
What do we need? I can't believe some people are calling for Polymarket to add a market for a successful assassination attempt. So if it's not enough that these meme tokens are about to mint when the ETF passes for Solana, I mean, now you can just directly bet with Tether on Polymarket, just whether or not it's going to happen. That's scary. Who knows if they're going to allow such a thing?
Just send a non-compliant Bitcoin transaction.
Nice. Serious?
It's true. No, I was donating to Samurai, to their legal defense fund. I wanted to do that before I forgot. Now, we got some pretty big donations last week.
Yeah, we did. I would say that's the best we've ever done in terms of raising cigarette money. Mm-hmm. Luckily, Fundamentals does not smoke cigarettes, so we don't have to buy him any cigarettes for the money. We get to share them all.
Yeah, it was a big week for the Bugle. We'll get into that in a little bit in the Fountain Boost at the end of the episode, but I just thought I'd mention that real quick. 45,000 sats over to the Samurai Legal Defense Fund. And I don't know. It's an interesting topic I want to talk about later, but we got a few more things that we got to get through before we get there.
Yeah, so speaking of intellectual stuff, people like Fundamentals, we recently learned about some members of the Intellectual Silk Road are building a very exciting new technology called ZK-KYC, which stands for Zero Knowledge KYC. So if you're familiar with like ZK proofs, ZK rollups on some of these other chains and something trying to bring to the Bitcoin blockchain, these guys are using this for KYC documents. So we're going to play their pitch, their ad for ZK KYC right now. And then we'll talk about it here a little bit after and see what you think.
Successful businesses are obsessed with their customers. Understanding the unique problems and circumstances your customers face enables your business to provide high-quality solutions and great customer service. Many highly successful entrepreneurs, including Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos, credit the success of their businesses to their obsession with knowing their customers.
However, the information collected about us by our favorite brands, consumer product retailers, and financial service providers in order to provide high-quality, low-cost services with best-in-class customer experiences is very valuable and stored in databases which act as honeypots, attracting nefarious governments, hackers, and law enforcement who want to gain access to it.
That's why we're developing Zero Knowledge KYC. ZK-KYC will allow regulated companies to comply with Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering laws as well as tailor your experience to your unique customer profile without ever needing to know or store compromising information about your off-chain identity, sensitive personal details, or shopping habits which could be used to associate you to your on-chain activity. To learn more about ZKKYC and unlocking the power of asymmetric compliance, contact us on the Intellectual Silk Road today.
What did you think about that? Richard, are you pretty bullish on ZKKYC?
I think it's an improvement. I know, like, a lot of the big tech companies, they try and advertise that this is what they're doing, and I don't believe it, so I'm a little bit skeptical of this, just because we've been so abused when it comes to our individual, privacy in general. But, while I'm skeptical, I feel hopeful at the same time.
Yeah. So for those of you who are not exactly, you don't know exactly what this stuff means, right? So ZK, zero knowledge proofs, are essentially, it's a method by which one party, the prover, can prove to their counterparty, the verifier, that a given statement is true, while avoiding actually conveying or exposing to the verifier any of the information beyond the fact that it's true. So as ZKKYC, you are able to, as a company, comply with KYC, AML, other types of compliance regulation laws. And as the customer, as the user, you're able to also comply with these laws without actually having to give the company your personal information, sharing with them certain, this is your private data. Because even if you trust your favorite brands and consumer retail product providers with all this data, because they're giving you such good customer experiences, if they get hacked, or the government hacks them, or there's a compliance cantillionaire decides to change the laws to say that your favorite Bitcoin company has to give them all in your data so they can make sure that you can afford to pay your taxes. Well, now you've been compromised. And so this is an attempt, and this is what they're calling asymmetric compliance. And because we live in a regime right now where the citizens, the taxpayers, are expected to comply, but the compliance cantillionaires and the government and people who act in BlackRock commercials, they are not expected to comply. They can be non-compliant. It's an asymmetric compliance environment. And so we need asymmetric compliance solutions. And it's kind of like what we talked about at the beginning when we started this podcast, that sometimes you've got to out-comply the government. And in the cypherpunk solution we're building zero knowledge KYC. I don't know if that's the way forward, but it'll be interesting to see how the intellectual Silk Road cypherpunks, engineers, builders, which is what we all are on the intellectual Silk Road, is we're cypherpunks and builders and intellectuals. You got to try something. So I think that's where we're kind of at right now.
It's just nice to see a little bit of innovation. I feel like there's innovation in some places, but in many ways we've been moving backwards.
Right.
And I think, the key to success is just always be moving forward, always trying to grow, always trying to improve on these processes. And this seems like, whether it's going to be successful or not, I don't know, but at least it's an attempt. So that has me feeling a little bit hopeful.
Right. So there was Bitcoin innovation comes in these waves, and it's like these eras. Some people call it like Bitcoin season 1, Bitcoin season 2, but whatever you call it, it seems like most of the innovation, 99% of the innovation that has occurred on Bitcoin since the last cycle. So the end of 2020, the last bull market, has been, and don't get me wrong, these are wonderful solutions, wonderful technologies, but they've kind of we've kind of come to the end of the road with the value that we can get from them, but it's been ETFs, custodial lightning wallets, and then decentralizing mining with Bitaxes. And those are great, but we haven't addressed the privacy problems. Because Bitcoin Lightning Network, there's a lot of privacy improvements that you can get from using Lightning, unless you're using custodial Lightning. So custodial Lightning is faster, it works better, it's cheaper, everybody can use it. You can boost our podcast with it. But if you're trying to transact adversarially using Lightning Network, you're kind of stuck either using Zeus, which is amazing, Liquid, but that's not really Bitcoin, or Moon Wallet. Those are kind of your only options. I know I'm missing one, so I'm sorry if I missed Almidi, but they quit, so they surrendered to the Taproot Wizards. But yeah, so you got Fedimints. Fedimints are pretty cool. There's some blood. That's like probably the most private way to use Bitcoin Lightning Network, in a custodial way. I mean, when it comes to Fedimints, that's really not something you want to do outside of your group chat. So, we need more innovation. So this is, like I said, this is where this is coming from. People really want to use custodial Lightning, but they want to remain private and they want to use it outside of their group chat. Maybe the ZKKYC, could be a solution for them. It could maybe be a solution for KYC mining, because that's what most people do, right? They're using KYC mining pools.
Yeah, they're buying their little bit axes and they're going through the KYC process in order to mine. They want to be compliant. They don't want, the significant amount of the Bitcoin hash rate to be non-compliant like it historically has been. Which, is a bummer. I think, a lot of this has to do with, PodConf's messaging. The idea that compliance is defiance, but in reality it isn't. But I see the importance for something like this, like the ZK KYC, because, we have a real issue here, which is that assassination markets are coming into Western countries, and there's a potential for Bitcoiners to be targeted in an attempt to promote NGU. And we know, every time you put your KYC information into a website, it's essentially it's like broadcasting a transaction on the blockchain where, it's viewable for everybody to see, essentially. And this is, potentially a massive way to help people secure their Bitcoin, to secure their own lives more effectively. It's a potential big gain for people in their OPSEC in general.
Hell yeah, man. I'm sound bullish on the builders and the cypherpunks as the intellectual Silk Road continues to grow, continues to expand. And I just love to see the growth and the optimism in the group chats. If you're not in a group chat right now, you're missing out on like we said, the problems of tomorrow, the game theory to figure out how we solve some of these problems. It's all taking place in group chats right now. And your job right now is I would say there's two things. Your job as a pleb right now is to be on as many podcasts, payment splits on Fountain as possible. You want to generate as much passive revenue through payment splits of Bitcoin podcasts that you have either hosted yourself. So if you're hosting a Bitcoin podcast, or you're becoming a guest on Bitcoin podcasts, or you are a guest on Spaces that gets uploaded to Fountain to be consumed as a podcast. You want to get on as many Fountain splits as possible. And you want to get in you want to be networking in the most high signal influencer popular group chats, where cypherpunks are discussing game theory. And to kind of move on to, I guess, our last topic, this one has been, other than assassination markets and politics, the biggest drama on the timeline since last week has been Whitney Webb. And Whitney Webb recently put out another article in her investigative series with the website Unlimited Hangout. And honestly, it's kind of surprising. So before last week, it seemed like Whitney Webb was one of the most popular influencers in Bitcoin. Joe Rogan and Peter Thiel were talking about Whitney. Pretty much every podcaster had Whitney Webb's name in their mouth in a positive way. But that all changed this week with her latest article, which honestly is very in line, same tone, same type of content as her previous investigative series. So I guess the mystery right now that we're trying to figure out, and maybe you have some insight on this, Richard. What changed? Why is Whitney Webb so controversial this week?
Well, it looks like she upset Podconf.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things a lot of people are struggling with is, there's been a saying for years, which is that everything is good for Bitcoin. And now a lot of people are questioning, is Whitney Webb actually good for Bitcoin? Did their model get broken? Did they find an individual, a credentialed journalist that is actually not good for Bitcoin in some way? Did their model get destroyed?
Right. It seemed like the majority of the criticism or the pushback that she's getting across podcasts this past week has been more to do with her tone, and that she has kind of crossed over to be like a perpetual doomer lately, and that she doesn't understand Bitcoin. Let me read this quote that I took from a Bitcoin podcaster who was posting about Whitney a lot on Twitter last week. He said, listen, nobody can dispute any of the evidence Whitney Webb cites in her extensively researched, highly scrutinized, widely discussed investigation that caused me and some of my favorite accounts on Nostr and some Bitcoin podcasts that I listen to feel that to become nervous that everything that we thought was going on in the past 9 months that we thought was bullish is actually bearish. And I just think that Winnie should listen to as many Bitcoin podcasts as I have, and then tell me if she still feels bearish. Because if she's listened to as many Bitcoin podcasts as I have, and she has a low time preference as I have, and she still feels worried about this takeover by the CIA and pedophiles and these different banking cartels, then maybe I should be worried. But I don't think she's listened to enough Bitcoin podcasts to understand that this is actually good for Bitcoin and that Bitcoin doesn't care. And that seems to be the kind of the consensus, is that we kind of solved this problem. We already talked about these potential risks to Bitcoin and why it could fail years ago. We talked about it on Spaces. We talked about it on Clubhouse. Nobody thinks about why Bitcoin could fail more than Bitcoiners do. And that's why it's so easy to dunk on journalists and other people on Twitter when they try to spread FUD, because we thought about this stuff already. But Whitney is still coming at it with more well-researched FUD than anybody at the New York Times or the Washington Post or at Forbes. And so this is causing some influencers to feel nervous. And do you think that I'm sorry, somebody called her a witch, that she's creating hysteria, that she's creating a FUD hysteria on the timeline when we are trying to get a bull market kicked off, and that she's kind of wrecking that?
Well, I think one of her critical misunderstandings, or it might not even be a misunderstanding, it just might be not the best way to communicate to a crowd that has listened to so many hours of Bitcoin podcasts, is, she's suggesting that, for Bitcoin to have a meaningful impact, people are actually going to have to do something other than just buy it on a KYC exchange and put it on their, hardware wallet or signing device. And I think people are kind of unhappy with that idea because, they're out there, they're working their butts off to, be able to afford their Netflix subscription and to be able to afford to pay taxes. And the suggestion that they actually have to participate and do anything other than just work and buy Bitcoin is very alarming to them because it would require an entire change in just general life strategy. It's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to have to, get up and participate in the world around you, and take accountability, for yourself. It's a big ask that I don't think a lot of people have really mentally prepared for. They thought that, Bitcoin would fix these problems for them. I mean, why do people support the government? They support the government because, despite their non-compliance, because they say this institution, is going to solve problems for me. That's why I'm paying my taxes, because I want them to solve problems for me. I don't want to do it myself. And in the same way, they're buying Bitcoin thinking that, they can replace the government, that Bitcoin's going to solve problems for them. So instead of, necessarily paying taxes to the government, they're paying taxes to the Bitcoin network and exchange fees. But now she's essentially presenting a different image or a different strategy that needs to be, potentially adopted.
Right.
It's a big shift.
It's like Ozempic. It's like Ozempic makes you thin. It fixes obesity. But if you don't change your eating habits and your lifestyle, it doesn't really fix everything. I don't know if that's it. I think that some people have this, and this is, probably a problem of just the way the world we grew up in. It's like when you see a bunch of people protesting on a college campus, and it's like they're protesting a genocide. And you're like, and they're screaming, they're hysterical, they're so emotional. Kind of like when you went and she's on a podcast, and it's like, you need to calm down. Once you have gone through, but once you finish your college education, you're not just halfway through freshman political science. Once you actually get all the way through, once you've made it through life and you're middle-aged, you'll realize that if you don't have to be so emotional and you don't have to get so worked up over these genocides. If you just do nothing, your life is okay. You're fine. You don't nothing. It all gets worked out. Everything gets solved. And you don't have to do anything yourself. And it's like, once you listen to enough podcasts and you understand that everything is good for Bitcoin, everything is good for Bitcoin. Bitcoin does not care. You just ignore all of this FUD, all of this fiat noise that's going around. Oh, BlackRock and the most powerful intelligence agencies and banking cartels are creating this central bank digital monetary network panopticon of surveillance that is regardless of which government or state jurisdiction you live in, is kind of creating this walled garden of access to financial transactions, and they're building it on top of Bitcoin to create this something that actually you spend these dollar tokens, maybe like Tether. It's like, dude, relax. We thought about this in spaces already. All we have to do, it's game theory. Bitcoin is decentralized. We just fork the government off. There's nothing they can do about it. And if you think about it, if all of the governments and banks and merchants and militaries and intelligence agencies, if they all tried to take over Bitcoin and they try to take over 51% of the mining with all the KYC mining pools, all we have to do is fork off on a Friday afternoon and then sell all of our Fed coins on Binance or somewhere, or BISC or RoboSats or wherever. And then we go to the new network and we buy the real Bitcoin with it. And we pump the price. And everybody who's stuck in an ETF or they're stuck in, one of these compliant custodial things that doesn't trade on the weekend, well, they're just sitting there crying, having fun staying poor, watching their net worth, watching BlackRock's net worth, watching Fidelity's net worth, watching all these Goldman Sachs net worth plummet to zero, and there's nothing they can do about it until Monday morning. But then it's too late. The real Bitcoin has already won. It's like I realize that takes a very long, it takes a lot of Bitcoin podcasts to get to the point where you now understand this stuff like we do. But that's why I think my people just, they say, understand, let's study Bitcoin, study the protocol a little bit longer before you just act so hysterically and kind of maybe potentially ruin this bull market for us.
Well, I think Whitney's problem is, instead of listening to 40 hours of Bitcoin podcasts a week, she's doing at least 40 hours of Bitcoin podcasts a week.
Yeah, right. See, yeah, exactly. It's like, if you want to do engineering or you want to do journalism or you want to do science, you got to study, do it first. Mm-hmm. Study it first, then do it. See, yeah, going on Bitcoin podcasts without listening to enough Bitcoin podcasts, you're just not going to understand how Bitcoin podcast listeners, how smart they are and how hard it is to impress them. I mean, you have to go to black markets in weird parts of the global south to be able to find fun that is going to scare a Bitcoin podcast listener, because we've heard it all. And there's very little fun that's really going to make us nervous. So, and if you haven't listened to enough podcasts, it's hard for you to know that.
Well, I kind of have to cut it short. Let's go through the Found and Boost real quick.
Absolutely. I'll start off here. My new favorite Bitcoin Bugle fan is now Satoshi. So Satoshi, I think prior to this episode, gave us the biggest base worth the most amount of cigarettes we've ever received until this last week's episode. So Satoshi boosted us 150,000 sats, and he says, if Hash Flatet thinks that she can dethrone me as the Bugle's biggest baster, she is dead fucking wrong. Not even her stinky ass has enough clients to compete in a boosting war. Heed this warning, Hash Flatet. If you ever try to outboost me, you will end up impoverished, unable to pay your taxes, and ultimately locked up in a federal prison. Wow, that is the definition of putting your money where your mouth is. Ash like that puts her money where her mouth where the money comes from. Like, she doesn't necessarily put her money where her mouth is. Satoshi laying down the gauntlet. That was one of the most based I think I've ever received, or I've ever even seen, much less received.
I agree. It was very based.
Yeah, and some of those sats are going to go directly to the Samurai Defense Fund. So, Satoshi, you the man. Next time we are in the same geographic location, let's smoke a non-KYC cigarette.
It's I like this idea of having a competition of who could be the biggest booster. So I think Sakatoshi's still in first place. So, like, what happened was, I made a comment in one of the previous shows, I think the last one, about how Sakatoshi was number one, which, spurred John. And to be fair, John, I think, is the biggest supporter financially across all the different shows. But I was talking about single boost. But yeah, Sakatoshi came in, and
when I saw this, he boosted us during the live, the debate live stream. So if you didn't check that out, I don't know if the recording is available. It's mostly just us kind of talking over the debate. But when I saw it, I'm like, what kind of skit could it be? And it made me wonder if, like, that's the kind of heart-stopping boosters that people who get the vaccine got. But luckily, great stuff. Thank you so much, Takatoshi.
Next boost is from John, 100 sats and says 100,000 sats and says John says 100,000 sats to the Bugle's Legal Defense Fund. PodConf and the DOJ are working together to suppress opposition, stifle free speech, and maintain control of the Bitcoin space. Their actions attempt to curb the Bugle's fundamental right to call truth to power is an attack on all plebs. By the way, is this donation tax deductible? I don't know. I'm not a tax professional, but we are a non-compliant organization here at the Bugle. It's the only way to do journalism correctly, in my opinion. So therefore, we don't have any sort of nonprofit status or any compliance status in which individuals can claim this as a tax deductible donation.
But at the same time, we will also not let the IRS know that you paid us this amount of money. So if you decide to not pay 100,000 sats on your taxes, we're not going to tell on you.
I think the thing that's important to understand here is, the signal that we're providing this industry is going to, inherently increase the price of Bitcoin, because we're, out there grinding, letting people know that Bitcoin has already won. And once they realize that, the price will absolutely shoot up dramatically, making it significantly easier to afford to pay your taxes, which in itself is kind of like a tax deduction.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, John. Biggest supporter overall. And we are also I would like to thank some of your biggest supporters as well. The next post is from the guest of our show last week, Fundamentals. He says, I had an incredible run that he boosted us 100,000 sats as well. So far we're crushing it on this last week episode.
This is important to distinguish is 100,001 sats.
Yes. He had an incredible fun with Rod and Dick. Could have rolled for 2 more hours. Thank God we didn't. We didn't get a funny joke out of Fundamentals. We were trying to, but we'll do it one again. Hey, I only wish I did not hold back so much laughter so the audience could hear how much fun we were having. And that's true, yeah. Fundamentals was laughing hysterically at Richard and my jokes. I only wish we could have reciprocated the laughter back to you, but maybe next time.
I mean, it's fun to cover the news.
Covering the news should be fun. Doing journalism should be fun.
Telling people Bitcoin has already won should be a lot of fun. And it is. Thank you, Fundamentals, for coming on the show. Fundamentals is also on the live stream. I still have yet to post that. I'm going to do that at some point this week, so people can go back and listen to our commentary on the selection debate between...
Just put it on film.
Yeah. It was almost like listening to a Bitcoin podcast for a few hours.
Yeah, before you invest too much time into it, it is a lot of just the audio of the debate itself with some commentary and some goofs and some jokes. But there were some good times. There were some good jokes on there. It was myself, Richard, Fundamentals, and Mars guest Mars, formerly of Triple Elite Memes. There's a lot of action going on in the chat, the Zap.stream chat. Yeah, good times.
100%. The next boost is from our good friend Max at Ungovernable Misfits for 50,000 sats, who says, great to hear some high-quality, thermodynamically sound Bitcoin purse discussion. My personal favorite is the Passport because it's a timeless classic to go with any outfit choice.
Nice. So, I mean, Max is sponsored by the makers of Passport. So if Max is officially calling the Passport a purse, not a wallet, That must be officially what they're going with. So, if you have a hardware wallet, or you're looking for something for your wife, or a nice gift for a female Bitcoiner who would appreciate a nice purse, check out a Passport. I think Seth for Privacy has helped develop that one. So he seems like the kind of guy in those purses. So hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I went to this restaurant last night and had some good steak, and I noticed this woman, had her Louis Vuitton purse sitting on the back of her chair. And I kind of wonder, if this is a place, kind of a marketing strategy, these Bitcoin
these purse makers.
Yeah, these purse makers, like these I mean, this could completely change the game. It could make Bitcoin a lot easier to spend, I think, which is very interesting dynamic. I think you covered this recently. You said if women were the wallet developers, Bitcoin would be significantly easier to spend.
Right. Yeah. I stand by that. And one of the things I know from talking to women in my life is that they like the utility that comes with a purse, so they can store a tampon or maybe some other makeup. So maybe the Passport, maybe they'll think about adding support for women's hygienic products to be able to store those in there as well, or coupons, where, women love stuff like that. So the next boost is an anonymous boost, but they gave us 20,000 sats. So thank you, Anonymous. I don't know if that's the hacker group or just a placeholder for somebody who did not want to be revealed, but 20,000 sats, like I said, and their comment is too much comedy. Well, most of our, I don't know, I don't think it was too much comedy. I think we could do more comedy. I don't think you could have too much comedy ever. But thank you for the boost, and we will note your opinion as a value-boosting listener. Boosting listeners, obviously, their opinions count more than non-boosting listeners. So, unless you can base more than 20,000 sats, too much comedy might be a more valuable opinion to us to hear.
Yeah. Well, we're definitely we're trying to mix it up. I think we're kind of going back to the normal, kind of format here. And we'll, probably mix it up in the future. But, appreciate the boost, even if you thought it was a little too much. But, there's also a good portion of people that really enjoyed it too. So, I mean, that's one of the hard things is you can't make everybody happy with these episodes.
It's impossible to please all the plebs.
And, our next boost from Mr. C.D. Brown, who used to go by We All Eat. I'm not sure why the name changed, but for 5,021 sats, said, not sure what happened the last 2 weeks, but these are getting painful and I haven't been able to finish them. I might give it one more week. FAO. So yeah, I mean, I think the complaint there was also, just the change in the format and the speed of the episode is definitely different. But, I mean, if you got feedback, feel free to reach out to me directly.
The next boost is from one of the OG Bugle Weekly followers, friend of the pod, Mark, for 5,000 sats. And their message was boost. Orangemont posted a pretty cool video of somebody flying a helicopter naked through the snowy mountains, playing one of my original pop songs, Girls on Spaces. If you haven't checked out Girls on Spaces, you ever heard that yet, you can find it on Wavlake, and I believe it is still pinned to the top of my Twitter timeline if you want to listen to that catchy tune. Thanks for the boost, Orange Mark.
That's cool. I haven't seen that video yet. I'll have to go check it out after this. Let's blast through the rest of these real quick. So Shadrach, 5,000 sats, posted cigarette emoji. Appreciate it, Shadrach. Shadrach sent me a picture, a carton of non-KYC cigarettes he had bought recently. So keep up the good work. Keep on supporting the Value for Value cigarette economy. Rev Hoddle, 2121 sats, said, it sounds like there's room in the market for a comedian at every Bitcoin meetup. Go to your next meetup with a short comedy set and let the value for value sats and cultural capital flow. I think it's kind of like, yeah, I think it's great advice. I think it's kind of challenging because, like, most people, you know, they understand that, you know, what we're doing here is kind of serious, and so they don't have a good sense of humor. They're too focused on, you know, taking themselves too seriously, and they don't make a lot of room for fun. So, you know, maybe that's something that we could change up in the, you know, cultural attitude at meetups. But, you know, you have to, you know, keep in mind, like, as you're preparing jokes, you're going to an audience of severely autistic people.
Right. It's not
so
the easiest place to try stand-up comedy for the first time, is the point.
Another boost from Blizza, 2,000 sats, asking, is this PodConf approved? I don't even really feel like I need to answer that. It's obviously not. You can see how much PodConf hates us by going over to their Twitter Nostr profile, where they're constantly posting about, you know, how much they hate us and, you know, how stupid they are. Next one from Vague for 1,200 sats says, being a retarded person, this is the only podcast I feel safe listening to. I'm glad you feel safe here, Vague. You got any thoughts on that?
Which part? Sorry, I kind of tuned out there for a second. I got distracted by something was going on.
I was reading Vague's boost.
Yeah, the retarded person. This is the only podcast I feel safe listening to. Being a retarded person myself, this is the only podcast I feel safe making. So, you know, there's something there. There's some sort of vibe going on there that we're both picking up on. Thanks for the sats.
Yeah, appreciate it, Vague. Good friend Abile, 1,000 sats, says, awesome discussion. This really goes to show the key to paving the intellectual road forward is the collaboration and exchange of ideas from its thinkers. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big one. You know, PodConf, our enemies are collaborating with each other. We have the resistance, the intellectual Silk Road. We have to collaborate with each other to defeat PodConf. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I think this is the last one. This is the next one.
Yeah, let's do it. It's God's Death. Beth DTF 537 sats. God's Death says, thank you, sirs. Laughing emojis. Hell yeah, man. No, we have another boost down here from another friend of the pod, C. Kelly Me, 250 sats. This was your funniest episode yet. Fundamentals should be irregular. A true comedic leader of the intellectual Silk Road. Yeah, it's true. He is a comedic leader of the intellectual Silk Road. That just means the intellectual Silk Road is early, and we're going to get a lot funnier.
I'm glad you caught that one. Yeah, so I mean that kind of wraps it up for the show today. You got any closing thoughts?
No, I would say if you haven't noticed, we're moving the music section to the end of the show. We're putting out all the songs on Wavlake, and we're going to compile some of this in other places. And I don't want to make any promises, but we may have found somebody to help us make lo-fi, like these really nice cassette tapes. If you have a cassette tape player, maybe in your old car, maybe it's at your house, and you'd like to listen to Bugle music and even potentially some Bugle content, other than music, on cassette, as it's intended to be listened to. So if you're, podcasting with a typewriter, listening to cassette players, check that out. Check out our music. We have these songs coming out at the end of the episode. If that's what if you like our songs. And don't forget that, like I said earlier, the more you boost, the more your opinion matters to us. So,
well, thank you everybody for tuning in, supporting the show. It looks like I need to send Samurai, like another 1,000 sats. I'll probably do that next week. 1,500 sats actually. I just did the calculation off of memory of what 10% of the show was. But
do you do a ricochet payment when you pay Samurai's defense fund, or is it?
No, I don't know how to do that anymore now that their wallet isn't.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. Yeah.
I did do an on-chain payment the week prior, but this most recent one I did was a Lightning payment, and it was not a custodial Lightning payment. It was a off my own node, off my typewriter.
Yeah, so you don't have to just boost us, man. If you want to support Samurai devs, we'll throw a link in the show notes here, so you can do that as well. So
yep, links in the show notes. If you don't want to click on that link, go to p2prights.org. Thank you for everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week on the Bugle Weekly.
Thank you for tuning in and boosting the show. If the audience keeps boosting the Bugle Weekly like they did last week, I might have to ask for a raise. Before we end the show for the week, make sure to listen to the end to hear Rod Palmer's hit song, Girls on Spaces, which you can find on the popular Value for Value music website, Wavlake.
I'm crushing so bad I can't sleep at night. If loving her is wrong, I don't wanna be right. She's the co-hostess with the mostest, but I missed all the signs that she's a federal agent who's got me crossing state lines. I'm always looking for love in all the wrong places. I just can't get enough of those girls on spaces. She's got a cold card, block clock, and hates KYC, but the badge on her busts me. She's not right for me. Finally up and the truth was revealed. She was just another fed, and I was the yield. She's got a cold card, block clock, and hates KYC, but the badge on her boss me. She's not right for me. But when the gig was finally up and the truth was revealed, she was just another fed, and I was the yield. When I met her in person down at Bitcoin Beach, I knew our future would always be just out of reach. I paid for our abuses with my non-KYC wallet, and she reported me to the IRS when she saw it. I'm always looking for love in all the wrong places. I just can't get enough of those girls on spaces. She's got a cold card, block clock, and hates KYC, but the badge on her boss me. She's not right for me. But when the game was finally up and the truth was revealed, she was just another fed, and I was the yield. She's got a cold card, block clock, and hates KYC, but the badge on her boss me. She's not right for me. But when the game was finally up and the truth was revealed, she was just another fed, and I was the yield. I wish I didn't love her so madly, and I wish I could marry her so badly, but she's a fed, and I'm a pleb. She's got a cold card, block clock, and hates KYC, but the badge on her boss me. She's not right for me. But when the game was finally up and the truth was revealed, she was just another fed, and I was the yield. She's got a cold card, block clock, and hates KYC, but the badge on her boss me. She's not right for me. But when the game was finally up and the truth was revealed, she was just another fed, and I was the yield.
Well, that's the end of the show. We'll see you next week on the Bugle Weekly.